Hello everyone, how are we all doing? Come on in, sit on down. Sorry we're late. As per usual, we had technical difficulties, but we found a workaround. We've found a way to solve our problem, and I'm joined today by Joe of JT follows JC, and I've got Vitally of AlphaTalkz, and we're gonna have a bit of a back and forth presentation conversation today about parasites and the strange link to the spiritual world and the possible connection to demons. And I'm really looking forward to this because this is one of those topics. I've been in the conspiracy game for a while, and you come across a topic every now and then, don't you? And you think to yourself, there's seriously something to this, and I don't know what it is exactly, but you hear it and you think, you know what, I need to pay more attention to this. But I'm a relatively ignorant fool when it comes to this topic. I'm not well read on it, so I thought I'd invite Vitaly to come on and share with us his own work because he's has made a few videos about this topic, which I thought were just so fascinating. So, Vitaly, are you there? Can you see us?
Sir.
Excellent. So we're sharing the screen now. Everyone can see us. Joe, good to see you. Thanks for being here. So, Vitaly, tell me how how did you come up with this? What was your inspiration for all of this? And then we'll just roll with it from there. I'll let you start.
Yeah, so about a year ago, I saw a video from the channel Mind Unveiled called Parasites Are Demons. And I watched that video. I thought it was super fascinating, and I decided to look into this topic through a biblical lens. And I've made a few videos on it, which you linked in your bio, where I talked about the connection between demons and parasites, and the stomach being the true location of the soul, possibly even our consciousness. And I made a slideshow to kind of present some of this stuff, specifically the parasite thing.
Yeah, I think I
So
remember
yeah,
seeing that video from Mind Unveiled quite a while ago. It's one of those things you see and you forget about. Like it's one because at the time I think everyone was at the time swimming in his videos. It was blowing up at the time, and it was just one of those many things he
yeah.
released. And I do remember hearing it and taking it on board and thinking, wow, that was really weird and fascinating, fascinating. And then suddenly the clowns took over my thought again, and everything else got involved, and the millennial reign turns up. But this is again, when you started talking about it and the gut, and how it's the seat of the soul and all these fascinating concepts, it reminded me of all of it. And I was like, we need to talk about this more. Let's take a break from eschatology and
Yeah.
let's get back to spiritual warfare. And this is one of those spiritual warfare topics, which again just kind of sweeps you up, and it's one of those that makes sense type of topics. Like that means something big, doesn't it? That we've just kind of been missing and again, shall we just get straight into the presentation? I'm sure you've got lots to show us. There's not much more we can really preamble about this, unless Joe, do you have anything you want to say before we start? What did you think about this topic when you first heard it?
No, it's just one of those things. I guess when you hear it, it makes sense. It makes sense that obviously there's multifaceted. We're mind, body, and spirit, and the demons maybe they don't have the body, but they have this other kind of you know part of them. And yeah, I mean, it does make sense when you recognize that when Jesus is healing people and he's casting out demons and they're healed of physical ailments. So makes sense to me.
Mm, absolutely. So, Vitally, take it away. So the technical difficulties, guys, is Vitally couldn't actually share his screen with us. We tried everything possible, and it turns out his technology has hindered him and locked him out of the capabilities of doing this. So Joe is going to be the one that's going to do the presentation. He's sharing his screen, and
Mhm.
Vitaly is going to take it away. So I'm going to leave it to you guys, and I'm just going to sit back and learn a few things here. So go for it.
Yeah, so Joe, if you can you share like the full screen, like click file, and then it should show share full screen
Let me see.
right here on the very left corner, or my left. That's how I see it.
It's on the left corner.
Yeah, so see where it says next to home, insert file, go up the top. Yep, yep. See next to home, and then there's file on the side,
Yeah.
and click. Wait, that's not it. Wait, go back. On the far right, does it show anything like share full screen?
It's funny, like it's like our faces are like in the way of like
Well, what the
weird.
guys can see right now is just us three at the top and his
Yeah.
presentation in the middle. So it's not that bad actually from the OBS view. What the
Oh, it's
live
not? Okay.
what
I
people
just
on
want
live
everybody to
Yeah, so what they could, if you could make it maybe, well, I can zoom in on it, so it doesn't matter actually, guys. So I'm gonna leave. You can just go away, and the vision's fine. So if you want to do slide by
Okay.
slide, what they can see is perfect.
Hmm.
So yeah, I made a slideshow connecting parasites to demons, and I looked into this topic through a biblical lens, and I found a bunch of very, very interesting things. So go ahead, click on the next slide.
All right.
Is it just a side arrow or down? Yeah, okay.
Is
Perfect.
that good or
Is
no?
this
You can leave that up on the side. They can't see it. That's fine. If you want to just press the down arrow every time you change slide, that will probably work.
Oh,
oh,
look at that.
There
Look at the big brain.
we
I
go.
finally figured it out.
Perfect. Yeah.
okay, so before getting into all the weird stuff, let's take a look at what parasites mean in its, most simplest definition. So a parasite is an organism that lives at the expense of another organism, the host. In general, parasites share the following features. Parasites are usually smaller than their host and are both invertebrate and vertebrate hosts. So yeah, basically they're an organism that lives inside of a host and they benefit from the host suffering, basically. So go back to the other slide.
Oh, how do I go back now? Oh, there we go.
There we go. Yep. So I looked into a lot of ancient beliefs on parasites and the spiritual world, and I found two very interesting ones. The first being Taoists. So go to the next slide.
Those monsters holding dynamite.
The what?
It looks like they got dynamite or something in their
Yeah,
mouths.
or a scroll or something.
Or that.
So in ancient Taoism, there's a concept known as the three worms, right? And they fully believe that parasites are demonic, or at least connected to demonic spirits. So the three corpses, known as the San Shi or three worms, are a Taoist physiological belief that demonic creatures live inside the human body and they seek to hasten the death of their host. These three supernatural parasites allegedly enter the person at birth and reside in the three dantian, which are energy centers, respectively located within the head, chest, and abdomen. After their human host dies, they are freed from the body and become malevolent ghosts. So that's their belief on parasites. They believe that they're actually demonic entities influencing a human through all kinds of means. Through basically, they believe that parasites were like a biological agent or like a Bluetooth for demons or demonic spirits.
Mm-hmm.
So click the next slide.
Is that one empty?
Should it? Yeah, yeah, I think so. Click one more time. There we go. So yeah, the three worms, the three corpses, they work to harm their host's health and fate by initiating sicknesses and inviting other disease-causing agents into the body, and they would report their host transgressions to the gods. So their entire purpose is to bring as much suffering as possible, and then eventually death. And then they become these spirits as soon as the body dies with the parasite, apparently. And then they report the transgressions of the host to the gods. So that was their belief on parasites. And then as we move on, we get into the biblical view of parasites. And we're going to talk about Beelzebub, Lord of the Fly. That's one of his titles. And in the Bible, he is known as the demon of filth. So the word Beelzebub means Lord of the Flies in Hebrew and Jewish literature. The name is translated to mean Lord of Dung or Lord of Filth. Beelzebub was also known as the god of Ekron. Ekron is a city inhabited by the Philistines within the Bible. And on the topic of flies, go to the next slide. So it's interesting that he's called, Lord of the Flies, Lord of Filth, Lord of Pestilence, disease, and suffering. Flies apparently can carry parasites that can harm humans and animals. Houseflies can carry over 100 pathogens, including parasites like pinworms, roundworms, hookworms, and tapeworms. They can also carry bacteria, viruses, and fungi. Flies can pick up pathogens from their environment, including dumps, sewers, garbage heaps, and then transmit them to humans. And in other mythological beliefs of gods that are, connected to filth and disease and pestilence, they kind of have the same view that their god of disease and filth can send pestilence in the form of flies and different kind of diseases like a plague, basically, to whatever nation that it wants to punish. Next slide. Are you able to see the parasites in fiction slide? Is it allowing
Uh,
you?
Parasites. I mean, I went to the next one. I got to the one, what our demons have in common with parasites? That one?
No, apparently I don't know why, but it's not allowing me to share the parasites in fiction. But I'll just kind of explain it.
Oh, that's
So
weird. Okay, wait. So that one was. I wonder if that's the empty one.
no, that's not the empty one. So if you go right after the fly picture,
That's weird.
yeah, it's not letting me share. Anyway, it's just two pictures of the movie Faculty and Venom. But yeah, you could just stay here. Basically, on the slide, I show two movies: the movie Faculty and the movie Venom, where it portrays parasites in like a fictional way, where there's like an alien parasite that takes over a human body and basically fully controls the host, right? So that's what the movie
Hmm.
is about. It's about these parasites that come from another world and they take over the teachers in this high school, right? And they cause them to be violent and evil. And again, many of us have seen the movie Venom, right, where the Spider-Man villain takes over somebody and causes them to do, dark and demonic things like kill people, eat people, and other
Also
wicked
from
things.
another, also from
Another world, right?
outer space too.
Yeah. So the motif is the same that these alien parasites come from another world, basically.
And if I
So
remember
go ahead.
correctly, in Venom, didn't the was it Eddie Brock? Is that the main guy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I
Yes.
believe he was on his knees praying to God for an answer to kill Spider-Man
Peter
in
Parker.
a church, and at the same time, Spider-Man was at the top of the church tower ringing the bell, making the
Mhm.
symbiote come off of him, and then it drips down and lands on Eddie Brock and makes him the new host. So I thought it's
Yeah.
interesting. There's a biblical reference there
Well,
as well.
oh yeah, well I think that's the comic book, and that's probably the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 3. That's the
Mhm.
way the story goes. It was funny in the current Venom movie. I believe that the scene before he gets the host, the Venom on him, the symbiote on him, he's doing meditation. He's like doing this meditation by like this new age guru, and I believe the shirt he's wearing is like this shirt that has the Eye of Horse on it.
Right, of
Hmm.
course.
Probably not an accident they put that in the movie, that eventually he gets possessed by a demon right after that. But it's interesting again if you go to the idea of like the old world technology, the fact that the church bells heal Peter Parker of this demon, right? The
Mm.
thing, the demon
Interesting. They killed off the
frees him
parasites
from him.
on frequency, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Another biblical reference is Venom would always reference himself in like a plural form, like
Yes.
we are Venom, we this, we are going to
Mm-hmm.
do, like, kind of like Legion in the Bible, basically.
Absolutely. Definitely.
But yeah, so when looking into this topic through a biblical lens, I realized that demons have a lot in common with parasites. Like they're pretty much identical. So go to the next slide.
Okay.
So demons within the Bible have been known to cause and influence suicidal behavior, like the account found in the book of Mark, chapter 9, verse 22. So in this account, a father is asking Jesus for help because his son is possessed by a demon. And this demon is basically casting his son into fire to try to kill it that way, and then trying to drown his son, right? Basically taking control of his cognitive abilities and making him commit self harm. And so, yeah, demons within the Bible and within the beliefs of many other cultures were known to influence and cause suicidal behavior. And the psychiatrist Jerry Marzinski that me and Paul interviewed also talked about this, how the voices or the entities of the schizophrenic patients would always encourage them to harm themselves, right? And
Mm.
harm others, basically engaging in self-destructive behavior.
Yeah, it's
So
funny.
go to the next slide.
Well, what's interesting, me and Paul just when we talked about the Tucker Carlson, his clips from this podcast, on the last one, he was on the Sean Ryan podcast. Like he literally mentions that the things are anti-human by logic, they're not from human. And we specifically mentioned like the kind of self-harm that only humans
Exactly.
really do to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And you have all these kind of things that we're doing as a society that are antithetical to our own survival and our own
Yeah,
best interests.
Mm.
Therefore, it's likely to conclude that it's not from us.
not from humans. Kind of like Jerry said in an interview with me, he stated that the human spirit doesn't want to destroy itself, right?
Mm.
Like you can take a suicidal person and throw him into a shallow lake. He's not going to try to drown himself. He's going to try to save himself, right?
Mm-hmm.
These thoughts
Mm-hmm.
of self harm are not human because our spirit does not want to die, right? We
Mm-hmm.
are,
Yeah.
God created us with this instinct to preserve our bodies and our souls, right? So
It's
we,
interesting because I just I had a subscriber reach out to me recently, and I just had a 2 hour talk with her a couple of nights ago. Now she decided against releasing the talk because she doesn't feel like she told the
mm,
story very well. But she basically told me a harrowing story of her son's suicide and the events leading up to it. And he was basically a man possessed. Is the only way I can describe the description she gave me. He was heavily seeped into the occult. He had schizophrenic tendencies, what Jerry Marsinski, would describe as the classic schizophrenic type,
mm,
DSM-5 type of symptoms, but it's clear it was demonic, the influence, because he was literally making altars to gods and was covering himself in odd Egyptian iconography. He was acting like something that wasn't himself. This woman was telling me he would start acting incredibly flamboyant and strange, and moving his limbs in weird ways. With the way he talked, his voice would change, and in those
mm,
moments of those episodes he was having, it's like that's not my son. Like I don't know who that was, but he would suddenly switch back to this sweet, kind, caring person again. But then he would become somebody else in an odd, strange way, and he would get clean from drugs, which seemed to be triggering for him. And then he would get back on track, and then he would relapse and fall back into this odd character again, who wasn't himself. And it got to the
mm,
point where he kept wanting to leave and go. I think he wanted to go to LA or something. He kept wanting to leave and travel a really far distance, and he always kept getting stopped when he had these episodes. She obviously forced the police on him to arrest him just to save his life, basically. But he got to the point where he did end up in this place, and when he got there, he steps in front of a train. It seems like
Mm.
the thing inside of him was leading him to a point with the promises he believed he was going there to save people or something. Like there was something pushing him there. I have to go to this place. I have to go here. I have to go here. And when he got there, he ended up obviously, like I said, killing himself. And the whole story was honestly. I hope she retells it, so and shares it, so I can share it with you all. But I can only give you glimpses here. But that wasn't human. Whatever happened to him, and I could see the occult through everything. She showed me his artwork and the things, the way he drew himself in during these episodes because he was an artist, and you could clearly see something else was channeling through him. And he created a lot of artwork with symbols of alchemy and hermeticism and mainly theosophy as well. A lot of theosophical symbols, like the front cover of the book by Helena Blavatsky about the Theosophical Society. It's quite literally all those symbols all mashed together. He was drawing quite a lot of.
mm,
And it just seems so odd from his mother's perspective. Like that wasn't her son. That just wasn't who he was growing up. Something happened. And maybe I don't know if she's listening, but maybe this parasite thing could be another answer as well. Maybe he got infected with a particular parasite that was using him in some way. Because me and Joe were just talking. There are literally parasites in nature that make the host kill themselves.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, I'll let you go. Anyway, there's sort of an interesting little side bit there that I
You know,
just came
you
across.
know, first I have to just interject my own movie anecdote just because this makes sense. Because I was thinking of like, in the first Ghostbusters movie when, Rick Moranis they're interviewing and he's got like, he's in the Ghostbusters like fire station. He's got the thing on. And when they're looking through the monitor, it's like the beast is like what they're seeing. They're not seeing him. They're actually seeing like the demon. And then like Egon had this collection of spores, molds, and fungus. And what does he
Mm,
do? And he's eating it. He's drinking it. Like right after that. Like of course it's just goofy in the movie, but
yeah. Art
the
imitates life
connect.
as usual.
Yeah, right. Like so, like is it possible that he's spores, molds, and fungus? He's like infilling himself with more demonic
Mm,
activity through that.
Yeah.
mm,
Parasites.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just like demons, parasites can influence or cause suicidal behavior, right? So there are a lot of scientific studies that show this to be the case. People who have the T. gondii parasite, which is the most successful mind control parasite on Earth, around 1 to 2 thirds of humans are infected worldwide. So this isn't a third world country problem. This is a worldwide problem. You could live in the cleanest neighborhood in Beverly Hills and you might be infected with a bunch of these parasites.
Mm,
But yeah, it causes trigger suicide attempts and suicidal behavior, right? This little biological worm can take control of your cognitive abilities and do this. Yeah, go to the next slide. So demons in the Bible and within the beliefs of many other cultures can cause various mental health disorders. What next one? Parasites, just like the demons who are able to cause various mental health disorders, are connected to psychosis and other human diseases, both physical and mental. So there are studies showing that they can cause bipolar disorder, they can cause multiple personality disorder, they are connected to schizophrenia. They have also been connected to rage disorders within adults. And what's very interesting, they're also connected to child maltreatment, meaning those who mistreat their children or other children, whether it's physical or sexual harm, they are more likely to have parasites, which is crazy. If you have this parasite, you are more likely to get into accidents, car accidents. You're also more likely to be an adrenaline junkie, right? So basically, you're more likely to engage in self-destructive behavior if you have these parasites, which is interesting. So go to the next one. So yeah, they're associated with a lot of major mental health disorders. 1/5 of schizophrenic patients apparently may involve the parasite T. gondii. But yeah, very, very bizarre stuff. Go to the next one. So parasites can control our cognitive functions and desires. There have been other studies that show that the T. gondii parasite can make us attracted to fear, danger, pain, and submissiveness, kind of like BDSM. So if you're into those kind of sexual activities, there's a good chance you might have this parasite. And this parasite has also been associated with sexual promiscuity, right? So those who are more sexually promiscuous, there's a higher chance of them having this parasite because it's one of the ways that this parasite spreads, right? So it influences your behavior to have more sex with random people so that it could spread itself more. But yeah. Next one. There are studies that show that this parasite can make you more attractive or influence behavior to make you more attractive, right? So like let's take somebody like a woman going to a club dressing provocatively. There's a chance that dressing like that could be influenced from the parasite in order to make her look more sexually attractive. Same goes for the men, right? So the article says right here, imagine that parasite has infected you and that parasite needs you to have sex to move to a new host. It would certainly be in that parasite's interest to help you become more physically attracted to a mate and act more promiscuously. So if you guys need more motivation to not just have random sex with people and follow the Bible, right? Not give in to your lust. If you want a more disgusting motivation, well, here it is. There's a good chance that the people you're having sex with, all these one night stands, they could be infected with parasites, right? So the more promiscuous you are, the higher chance of you being infected with many parasites. So, yeah, very weird stuff. So yeah, this parasite can make you more attractive, so you have more sex and spread it. It's also been connected with other sexual attractions and behaviors, specifically connected to fecal matter and those kind of sexual activities that involve the back door, because through feces is one of the ways that this parasite can spread, right? This parasite also influences fatal attraction, right, to fear and danger. And people who are into sexual violence are also more likely to have this parasite. But yeah. Parasites manipulate or can manipulate your eating behaviors. Some parasites, like tapeworms, can increase your appetite and food consumption, which can lead to weight gain. Microbes in your gut, including parasites, can manipulate your eating behavior to increase their fitness. They might do this by making you crave foods or crave more foods they specialize in or that suppress their competitors by making you feel dysphoric, right? Dysphoric until you eat foods that benefit them. So what kind of foods benefit them? Processed foods, sugars, processed carbohydrates, that is their fuel source, right? So again, this connects to the sin of gluttony. This parasite influences you to eat all this sugar, all this processed foods. And I find it very interesting, right? Like it's the most common advertisement you see, right? You can't go 30 minutes without seeing a fast food advertisement, on a billboard or like a YouTube video or anywhere else, right? We see it all day. I don't know how many fast food advertisements you guys encountered since you woke up, right? But this is their fuel source. It's processed foods. It's trying to make the gut as unhealthy as possible so it can be more suitable for these demonic parasites. So it's interesting that it literally takes control of your cravings, right? So craving a bunch of sugar and processed food is not normal whatsoever. I'll go to the next one. But yeah, that's their fuel source. So yeah, we're going to talk about T. gondii. This is known as the most successful parasite on Earth. Like I stated earlier, 1 to 2 thirds of humans are infected with this parasite, right? So it doesn't matter if you're a Christian, if you're an atheist, if you live in a third world country, or a clean neighborhood somewhere in Beverly Hills, you still can be infected by this parasite. Now, what's very interesting about this parasite that although it can infect like any warm-blooded animal and humans, uh, its definitive host is a cat and members of the cat family. So that means that its sexual reproduction can only happen within a cat's body, which I find
It's
very.
weird.
No other animal is this parasite able to reproduce inside. So it's also one of the reasons doctors tell mothers, right, who are pregnant to not go near cat feces. Have you guys heard of that before?
Hmm.
I think I actually have heard that. Yeah, thought that's weird.
Yeah,
That
so the
is,
reason is because when the cat poops, all those little, what are they called? Oocytes, the little eggs, right, from the T. gondii parasite, ends up in the cat poop. And it's very dangerous to babies. It can kill babies as and pregnant mothers. And so a lot of doctors, they will ask you, do you own a cat? If yes, well, they tell you to stay away from the cat litter, don't clean it, have somebody else clean it, right? So that's a common thing. So a lot of you
hmm.
watch who are mothers or who are pregnant, you probably know this because doctors most likely have told you to stay away from cat litter. But yeah, go to the next one. So after learning about the whole weird cat connection to this parasite, I started thinking about the ancient beliefs of cat worship, right? Or like, why were cats considered so holy in different ancient cultures, specifically ancient Egypt? And I thought that the ancient Egyptians worshipped cats as gods, but that's not the case. Cats were actually worshipped, they weren't worshipped as gods themselves, but as vessels that the gods chose to inhabit and whose likeness the gods chose to adopt. So they're not gods themselves. They were believed that they can be vessels for the gods. And that's why they were considered so holy, right? And they would mummify them next to the pharaohs. And again, it's interesting that they can be vessels for gods. And then scientifically, they can be vessels for demonic like parasites that can take control of your body, influence your behavior, influence you to do self destructive things like harm yourself, harm others, right? Just basically do a bunch of sinful things, what the Bible would call sinful, right? So I found that
Sure.
connection very interesting. And again, this is not a vendetta against cats. I loved cats. I had one that passed away like a year ago from liver issues, but I'm just pointing out like a weird connection. It's very interesting. Go to the next
What's
one.
weird, what's weird
Oh, go
about
ahead.
cats too is that you have like if you watch the way they move like big cats. They move like
Yeah,
tigers and lions and stuff. But I saw a video about a year ago, and it was basically pointing out the fact that but the eyes of a cat, a household cat,
perfect.
domesticated cat, are different than the big cats. The big cats don't have the split pupils. So like the the domesticated cat literally has like a reptilian looking eye.
Mm-hmm.
That's
And
that's
hit like
weird.
snake.
That's weird. I mean, that's really bizarre. When I saw that, I was like, yeah, because you would expect all the characteristics to be the same on these animals, just a miniature version of it. But obviously, there's something different about that.
Hmm.
And I thought, I remember in the Mummy movie, there was a point where like the mummy was trying to like regain physical form, and at one
Yeah,
point, like the cat scares the mummy. The mummy was like terrified of the cat. It
yeah.
was just like it was like yeah, obviously it's not really explained other than just like we know there's this connection with the Egyptians and cats.
Hmm. It's funny
The
because
belief that our vessels for gods, right?
yeah,
And have
Mm-hmm.
I did just
you guys
write
seen the movie The Fallen?
which one?
Fallen
The
I don't
fallen.
see
with
that.
Denzel.
No, I don't see that one.
Okay, so that movie is about the fallen angel Azazel taking over a human host and basically causing them to kill, right? Becoming a serial killer.
Hmm.
And at the end of the movie, when that host dies, right, and Azazel is freed, he inhabits a cat. That's the ending of the movie, which is
Oh,
interesting. I just want
well, there's even in what's in the Men in Black. I think the first Men in Black movie,
yeah,
they're trying to get Orion's belt, and I think the cat's name Orion. I think it's wearing some like little collar or something like that that
yeah,
has a whole universe
Hmm.
attached to its collar.
Well, isn't it also common in stereotypical mainstream Hollywood witchcraft that the familiar a witch always has is a pet cat of some kind? That's they always have a familiar, don't they? Like witches and warlocks. It's
yeah.
like
I looked that up, and apparently cats according to the belief of ancient witches, their little cat partners, specifically black cats, were like a shape-shifting demon or something. That's what they believe.
Oh,
Familiar.
so that Fallen movie you're talking about, just think about the Smurfs. So Gargamel has a cat, and the cat is named Azrael.
Hmm.
I
That's
mean, so
interesting.
it's pretty close. It was even in the was it in the movie Cinderella? The cat's name in the Disney movie is called Lucifer.
Oh yeah.
That's right.
We're making some
How do
connections
we?
here.
But yeah, so ancient Egypt and demonic parasites. So now that we know that cats were not considered gods, but vessels for the gods, I found it also interesting that a lot of Egyptian pharaohs and royalty had that serpent symbol on their headdress, right? Coming out of
Hmm.
their head.
Mhm.
And there could be a chance that that little serpent could be a parasite, right? That's controlling the pharaoh himself, right? Like a
Oh
Oh,
demonic
wow.
god
I never
that's
thought about it
controlling
like
the
that.
human.
That's
So
What
fascinating.
as
what
you see
you
on the picture right here, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say what's your other thought? I mean, this is a little bit of side trail, but the Mandela effect, and everyone talks about the King Tut. You never heard that one where they say
Yeah,
originally it
where it
was
has
one,
two
it was
things.
one cobra. Everyone remembers
Yeah,
one cobra, but it's actually two.
that looked weird to me too. So I was like,
Yeah, I
okay.
think it does too. It does. Yeah, I would have thought it was one, but yeah. Do you remember that, Paul? But yeah, that's one of the Mandela effects. They say that
Isn't
the
that
Newest one.
basically the gold mask of King Tut is different because it once had one snake, one cobra, now it's got two.
if I remember, and I only know this because my mother was obsessed with Egyptian stuff when I was growing up. Not so much these days, but I think she went through a phase. I don't know what it is. And I remember going to a museum when I was a child, full of Egyptian stuff, like full of it, you know. And I when you said it, I remember distinctly that face mask, you know, that of the tomb, you know,
Mm-hmm.
had one cobra on the front. That's what I distinctly remember. So
Mm-hmm.
and you're telling me it's two snakes side by side now. Is that what it actually is?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, I think everybody's like that. That seems weird, the two. I mean,
Yeah. It's one of those things that my memory is telling me it's one cobra in the middle, and I know that is the case. Like I know it. But but
mhm.
I know you've mentioned it. I know I've seen whenever it's shown that there's two sides. One's a cobra and one's just a normal corn snake or something, isn't it? I'm not sure what it is. I can't remember. Um,
Maybe something like that.
Oh, but I think that's a fascinating concept because people have always equated that to being a symbol for the third eye or something like that. You know,
Hmm.
or like the what's it called, the serpent energy that goes up the spine. What was the name? The Kundalini energy.
I
A
like
co-
some kind of
Mhm.
metaphor, right?
yeah, like a culminating into the pineal gland and accessing the spiritual realms. And I think people always equated that to be that, or if not that, people would say it's a marker, a symbol of the bloodline, the reptilian bloodline of some kind,
Hmm.
the Nephilim, let's say. But that concept that it's actually just a parasite controlling their mind, I think that's really fascinating. And have you ever seen Naked? Is it the Naked Lunch?
Hmm.
It's I'm gonna have to Google this. I'm sorry, guys, and I know it's gonna come on the screen for
It,
everyone else
it
to
could
see
it
now.
could it could also be, like serpent, as like it's the serpent's obviously associated with knowledge.
Hmm.
So it could be all the above. It could be
Yeah, so
third eye, it could be knowledge, it could be, yeah, and it could also, but of course they'd want to think it is something more grand than
yeah.
than having worms in your brain.
So it was
Yeah.
William S. Burroughs who wrote the book called The Naked Lunch, and it was about basically a heroin addict's descent into madness. And he ends up communicating with regularly and seeing these reptilian people, these entities. And they had a proboscis which comes out of the forehead, or I think, or something like that. And it was basically a parasite that came out of the forehead. And I think the real stuff that comes out quite a lot in conspiracy circles. I think even Donald Marshall,
Yeah.
the cloning center guy, came up with a lot about this. But he says the parasite comes out of the forehead of the reptilian monster, and
Mm,
that monster just dies. But it's because all of its consciousness is in that parasite that just came out of its forehead, and there's nothing else to
Hmm.
it, you know. And I thought that was fascinating because that's symbolically speaking, that's what's going on right there. That image you're showing there, there's a parasite coming out of the forehead of a possibly
yeah,
reptilian hybrid bloodline,
yeah.
and the consciousness is of the true entity controlling that vessel is seated in the parasite. And that's what we're trying to say here, isn't it? That parasites are demonic in consciousness, or perhaps conduits for demonic consciousness. And when you are parasitically infected, you are technically possessed by the consciousness of demons.
I
Something like
completely
that. So it all kind of connects in some weird way with all
Yeah.
these other things that I was just noticing and firing in my mind right now. But sorry, go ahead, carry on.
yeah.
Should I go
So
next slide?
oh no, get down this slide. So
Yeah.
that's possibly the possibility is that the serpent represents a demonic parasite taking over the pharaoh, controlling the pharaoh's body. And that's actually how parasites work when they take control of your cognitive ability, specifically the T. gondii parasite. It coils up in the brain, like near the pituitary gland, and that's how it's able to influence your behavior, your actions, and it's possibly what's going on in this picture, right? So at the bottom it says, "Were cats honored in ancient Egypt?" Yes, cats were considered holy and vessels for the gods. How is toxoplasmosis spread to humans? One of the big ways is through cats, right? That's how you get this demonic parasite, basically. But yeah, next slide. So after looking into all that and finding all these interesting connections, I also realized that a lot of biblical commandments are actually anti-parasitical, right? Like in the Bible, the commandment not to sleep around, right? Not to lust. It protects you from being infested with or infected with parasites, right? One of the biggest ways to kill off parasites is through fasting. So in the book of Matthew, chapter 17, verse 21, there's an account of the disciples trying to cast out a demon and nothing seems to be working, right? Which is odd because they were able to cast out demons before, but this case is a little different. And so Jesus comes to them and he says, "This is different. This kind of demon is a lot stronger. And this kind goes out only by prayer and fasting," right? So again, if parasites are like demonic biological agents that are controlled by demons, and that's how they're able to cause all these physical and mental ailments, then it makes sense as to why Jesus said this kind will go out by fasting, right? Because fasting kills parasites. So all textbooks and treaties dealing with the subject of reading parasite stress or parasites, they stress the importance of fasting, right? Because it kills parasites. And that's why often, I don't know if you guys fasted for a few days before or even a day, right? You've never fasted before. You'll notice that you start experiencing mental clarity and certain ailments, maybe even your vision is getting better, right? And that's another thing. Like I said in the beginning, parasites are able to cause all kind of physical ailments, just like demons, right? So in the Bible, demons were able to cause deafness. Parasites can cause deafness, according to a lot of studies. Parasites can also cause blindness, just like demons in the Bible, right? They can cause cancers and all kinds of issues, basically. Virtually every issue can be connected to parasites, which is crazy, right? And yeah, so fasting is one of the best ways to kill off parasites. And this is why Jesus said that there are certain demons that you can't just get rid of by casting them out in my name or just by praying. He says you need to pray and fast.
Well, that's interesting because even the way that, I mean, I would have read it, or I have always read it, like the person trying to cast the demon out needs to fast, but perhaps he meant the person with the demon needs to fast.
The person with the demon.
Yeah, because I mean, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like that you would have just assumed like, oh, you're not doing it right. You guys need to fast and come back later and then pray. But yeah, it actually kind of makes more sense in the context where like you can't cast this kind out. They need to fast and they need to pray, and then they can be healed.
Exactly.
It's funny because in the past I would have always assumed that the necessity of fasting to cleanse demons from the body was more to do with taking away from the demon the thing it's using your vessel for. Do you get what I mean? So in a way, it leaves you behind because you're no longer partaking in that particular thing that it was using you to enjoy.
That you can't cut off.
Sorry. Yeah, so the idea was that, demons were using you for something. They wanted you to smoke something, drink something, eat something, do something particular. But when you stop doing that thing or fast from doing that thing, then it would kind of starve the demon of what it wants, so it gets bored or leaves or something like that. But this makes far more sense. That if you don't get rid of the physical issue, the physical antennae or conduit for the demon, it can always keep its claws in you through the parasites. This massively explains fasting and the necessity in a biblical sense in ways that blew my mind. I just thought I'd say that. Anyway, go ahead.
No, it looks like he's gone.
Oh no. I think he's muted himself.
Yeah, where did he go? It looked like he froze, and then maybe just he needs to come back.
Fair enough. So anyway, all right, we'll have a mid-show break here while we're waiting for Vitally to come back. Joe, what do you think about all this so far? What are your main takes from it?
It's well, I think my takes. Obviously, everyone's going to say this guy only wants to bring up movie references, but I mean, like they're just popping off my brain the whole time. I kept on thinking of like the Lord of the Rings. Do you remember the story of Wormtongue? So
Yes.
Wormtongue is like that. So Wormtongue is the one who is like possessing Theoden, and so obviously Theoden clearly. I mean, like that's in the Two Towers movie. He clearly has a demon,
Mhm.
and it's this kind of wizard magician demonic figure named Wormtongue.
Yeah.
It's like, and I think even in the what is it in like the movie The Poltergeist. I remember seeing parts of it when I was a kid, but I'm pretty sure like who is it? I can't remember the main lead in that movie. But yeah, he's got like some worm in him, and yeah, he's like possessed.
Well, it's really common, isn't? Wasn't there? It wasn't Cabin in the Woods, but is it called just called The Cabin or something like that? Another horror movie,
Oh,
which
I think I know what you're talking. Is that a Cabin Fever?
it's something literally about like slugs or something, or some kind of parasitical worm monster was infecting people, if I remember correctly. Have you realised this has actually been mentioned quite a lot all throughout media, quite repetitive, isn't it?
Right.
This theme of the parasite. It's always been there. Like they've always kind of. Someone else did correct me earlier, actually, and I probably should say this. It wasn't that William S. Burroughs in The Naked Lunch, the character in The Naked Lunch, was doing heroin. He was injecting insect poison, and I was thinking, is that not kind of like a parasite purge? He was taking in the poison that would kill off tiny things, crawly things like parasites. So maybe Burroughs
Hmm.
was trying to tell us there, you come for the parasites and you start taking these things that kill parasites and they'll start manifesting in front of you and making you see and do weird stuff, I mean, like, it's like a defense
Wow.
mechanism. I don't know, is it because he did hallucinate a lot in that movie, these reptilian amphibious monster things, so I thought that was quite funny. Anyway, we've got Vitally back. We had a bit of a mid-show banter there, back and forth about what we thought was going on. But can you hear us, Vitally? Are you good? Nope, I've got a frozen screen.
He's frozen again.
Oh no. Just quickly hopping over to the chat here as well. Let's see what people are saying in the meantime while we get this sussed. Um,
Yeah, just say it does seem like this is again like a scenario of we didn't know what we were looking at. We're watching. It's like this is a very common thing in these movies with cats,
For some reason, you guys are breaking up. I'll have to
parasites,
come back.
zombies. That
I think he was just playing back in the background now. Like 10 minutes ago worth of our talk. He must have been looking into it. But yeah, like I say, it's been there for a while. I thought it was funny we were talking about fasting. I know I need a fast right now. Like
yeah.
I'm due a fast because I went to America for 2 weeks in Florida, and yeah,
Oh no.
honestly, after eating the American food for 2 weeks and then coming back, I've been stuck in the cycle of eating late and eating early as well. And I used to only eat after midday and stop eating after 6. And I need to get back into the habit of doing that again. I found intermittent fasting really helps keep me focused. And I'm feeling sluggish, I'm not gonna lie. I'm starting to feel like the need to cleanse. Something
Isn't
like
that
that. Go ahead.
even that phrase, feeling sluggish?
Yeah,
It's
it's
like it's
there, yeah.
slugs. Yeah. I mean, no, but I do think that I mean, that was one of the things that blew my mind when I found out, like, we have our FDA here that lets us eat all kinds of, you know, chemicals and stuff. You go to where obviously you live and you get the same brand box, and there's a million ingredients in ours, none of them you can pronounce. And
Mhm.
like it was like Quaker Oats, there's like a list this long, and then like where you would buy them, it'd be like oats and salt.
It is and your e numbers over there. Wow, I can't believe how many e numbers you guys put in everything all the time. I mean,
It's
we're not
a
we're not
that's
fully we're not
unbelievable.
fully free from it here, but there's a distinct difference when you, like I said, put the packets next to each other and look at the ingredients, and you will see there's a huge. You guys put sugar and salt in everything. things that don't need sugar and salt are just full of sugar and salt. And I'm not saying this like to bash Americans or America, because people are really proud of the country and don't want to hear a British person like talking about America in any way. But I'm just telling you, as somebody who's been there recently, and maybe this is the Floridian thing. Maybe that's just what it's like in Florida. Who knows? And everywhere else is perfect. But
No, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
salt and sugar, you guys have a problem.
I wonder if it has something to do. The one thing I noticed a lot is that most Americans probably go to the grocery store at least once a week. Like a lot of us who have kids, we go a lot more than that. And yet there's massive amounts of preservatives in the food that you consume like that you consume regularly. Like you don't need that much preservatives in food. I wonder if that's why they put so much sugar and salt and stuff to cover up some of the stuff they put in the things so you don't taste it. You know what I mean? Like all the stuff that they put it like, they'll put stuff outside. Like, it's like I've seen a couple of people sharing like some things you think are ice cream. They actually say on the box like frozen desserts. It's really not ice cream. And if you put it outside, it doesn't melt. And you're like, well, that's kind of frightening because like what does it do inside your body if it doesn't, the kind of stuff that doesn't, like a McDonald's hamburger, you can put outside for like a month and there's nothing wrong with it. Like bagels that don't ever get moldy, like never.
Yeah.
Like that's not what bread does. So like what's in that stuff?
I had a flashback then to a Simpsons episode where I think Bart like does something and his arm snaps and he's like, my bones are so brittle. I don't understand. I always drink plenty of milk, and he's looking at this milk and it's just like,
not really milk.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Just a flashback there. Anyway, Vitaly's back. We got him. We're back. Shall we get on with this presentation? We had a bit of a break there in the middle, a bit of a breather, a bit of comedy, a bit of a banter. Let's crack on with this. So Vitaly, where shall we go from here? We'll let you carry on.
You can hear me pretty good right now?
Yeah, perfect.
Yep.
Okay, I don't know. It randomly just kicked me out for some reason. It's the parasites.
Yeah. It's the parasites, yeah.
So yeah, we talked about fasting being very important, right? To cast out demons and also to cast out parasites, right? So it's interesting that that's the same. So the concept of fasting is actually missing in a lot of modern Bibles, especially English Bibles. I think it's also missing in a lot of modern Bibles, throughout the world, whatever language it's in. So here's an example, right? Matthew 17:21 is missing in NIV and I believe also ESV and a bunch of other English translations. And so in Matthew 17:21, it says you can only cast out this kind of demon by prayer and fasting. Now, there are some Bibles that say cast it out by prayer, but it doesn't say fasting, right?
So that's weird.
Another example is Mark 9:29. Where it says, he said unto them, this kind can come forth by nothing but by prayer and fasting, right? Now, the NIV says, he replied, this kind can come out only by prayer, right? And again, you find the word fasting missing in a lot of modern Bible versions, which is interesting because, that's what a demon would probably want. If it knows that fasting can cast it out, it probably wouldn't want it in these modern Bible versions that a lot of Christians read. And a lot of these modern... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that's like that translation. This kind of can only come out by prayer. It's kind of like, isn't that kind of what they're doing? Like, what do you mean it can only come by prayer? It's like it does seem like that's
doing that.
They've been praying to get the demon out. Like so, like that seems kind of like that's not a lot of help.
Like something's missing, right?
Yes, like it does seem like something's omitted from that statement.
Yeah.
Well, this is huge. This is a huge condemnation for the NIV here, though, to admit something so important. This is damning of that translation. Like when you,
the Bible has warnings, right? The Bible has warnings. What happens to those who omit verses, right? To the scribes who omit these things, right?
Well, it's funny because people always argue in the millennial kingdom realm, like, well, how would the Bible have survived in such a realm of like complete control by Satan? Why do you think your book's so special that it wouldn't have been corrupted? And we're showing you here, they're making attempts. They're trying their best. Like they're doing things, It's not like, but we know there's a core message that, and so many copies, it's very difficult for them to fully erase it from history. It would have been impossible, in fact, to erase the Bible from history. It's the most read, most copied, most vast book in the world, But what they can do is, we'll just create new versions. We'll just
I think it's subtle. It's more subtlety that they kind of remove, or like because obviously these are translations, and some of them I would believe are the best faithful translations they could do. But I saw a video from the scholar who was saying like the KJV, obviously versus like the Geneva, where it's like the king is like the head of the church. King James was like the head of the church at the time, and
Mm.
so it's like we don't have a position for like with like when kind of like the biblical structure of a church. So therefore we would start putting our roles into this language when it's really not, it's kind of like that's why people are like, well, where's the pastor? So why do we see a pastor as overseer here? Because
Mm.
that's the position we have here. It doesn't necessarily mean it's correct in the way that but that's the position, because it's kind of like, so our language would say that a pastor and overseer are the same, but they're not.
Yeah.
But that's the word that would be translated because that's the word we have for it. So I think
Mhm.
that those kind of subtleties, I think that definitely are,
Hmm.
because they don't want to change our whole structure of our church,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Go ahead.
there are hundreds of Bible versions, right? Or English Bible versions. And
Hmm.
in order to, when talking about, a lot of these Bible versions are copyrighted, right? So NIV is copyrighted, ESV is copyrighted, KJV is public domain. And other older Bibles are also public domain. I believe the Septuagint is also public domain, right? The
Hmm.
Orthodox Bible. So again, I don't think it's right to have God's word copyrighted, right? It belongs to everybody. But what's interesting about the whole copyright thing, when writing a book, in order to have a copyright, you have to have at least a 10% difference from the book that you're copying from, right? So let's say you want to write a version of Lord of the Rings. Well, it has to at least have 10% or more. So what does that mean for these modern Bible versions? It means you would have to omit verses, right? And as the years go by, it keeps getting watered down more and more and more. Just like you see right here.
Interesting.
Yeah, NIV is missing verses, right? Specifically fasting. And yeah, so a lot of these Bibles, and in fact, a lot of these modern Bibles that a lot of Christians read, a lot of my friends read, they're younger than them, right? So the ESV, for example, it was created in 2001. So I'm older than the ESV. The NIV was created in the 1970s, right? So a lot of these Bible versions were recently created. There's
Well,
so
the
many of
NIV, but the NIV, I remember my buddy who liked the NIV, but he was saying there was an NIV that was before 1984 that was
them.
better. Like, and then I think after 1984, they started changing it and they started making like, gender pronouns more neutral and
Yeah.
probably doing stuff like this. And that's why like most people who know better don't rely on the NIV anymore.
So again, like the Bible says, it's the scribes peddling God's word for money, right? Like taking
Mm.
out verses, making it copyrighted, and selling it, right? You go on the NIV website, you'll see the little copyright thing. But
Well,
yeah, so
that's it. Well, yeah. So it's like likely that let's just say, well, this is a better translation, but I have to change it enough so I can sell it.
yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, that's
money
obviously
thing.
that sounds horrible.
It's wicked. Yeah, it's a money thing, and
Just
it's
got.
interesting. Specifically, fasting is what's being removed from a lot of these versions.
I think this is a huge smoking gun for the kind of things they want to keep from us.
Mhm.
Like I said, just they're clearly hiding the importance of parasites here. So just a shout out to the chat here. Someone called Lani said something which is very interesting, and I don't know if you've thought about this already, but I think maybe you're getting to it. But the comment is your antibodies are God's way of sending an army of angels to combat, let's say, the legion of demons in a way. Metaphorically speaking, and perhaps literally speaking, could this have something to do with it? Is this where maybe the idea that people who can kind of cure themselves through intent by just keeping a positive attitude in some way, or keeping
Belief, yeah, belief
having
and faith.
faith in God that will cure all things? Does that produce antibodies in some way that combats parasites? I don't know. I'm just literally spitballing here from that comment just rung out to me. I thought that was really interesting. Like,
Yeah, that is. It's kind of like, that's the purpose of prayer. Prayer destroys the demons in its spiritual form, right? It casts it
mm,
out in the spiritual form, and fasting kills the physical part, which is the demons like Bluetooth or biological agent, which is the
Hmm.
parasite. And so I think so. I mean, by prayer, you're tuning into something good, right? You're tuning into God.
mm,
And why not? I mean, throughout the Bible, he's changed people's physical ailments, right? Like Jesus was healing people with his
mhm.
power, right? So it's possible that it is creating antibodies, right? Like, how did Jesus heal the blind man? He spit on the ground, right? And dirt. Is that what happened?
Rub dirt in his face, rub dirt
They
in his
rubbed dirt in
eyes.
it was like his DNA or something like that. I don't know, that part was interesting. But yeah, a lot of Bible versions remove the concept of fasting, and fasting is incredibly important. And another thing to say is because fasting is a concept that's removed from the Bible, a lot of these modern Bible versions that these churches read and removed from the teachings of a lot of these churches as well, especially the Protestant churches within America, it makes sense as to why Christians, statistically speaking, in America are the fattest religion, meaning atheists are healthier and fitter. Hindus, Muslims, every other religion is healthier than us, right? So I grew up in a Slavic community. I grew up Orthodox actually, but I have like relatives and cousins that grew up Baptist. And there's a lot of Baptists from where I'm from. I used to live in Sacramento. And a common tradition, right, for a lot of churches in America is after church on Sunday, let's go to a buffet, right? Let's just scarf a bunch of food, a bunch of processed carbs and processed sugar. And that was the tradition, right? So it's very normal. Like being fat and like gluttony was not seen as like a very serious sin. You know, what they would say was, oh, that's more of a fleshly thing. It's not as serious as committing other sins. But within the Bible, the spirit and the flesh are always interconnected. You're not going to separate the two. If your flesh is not doing well, your spirit's not doing well, right? If your spirit's not doing well, your flesh is not doing well. And an example of that is, let's say you have anxiety, right? Something happens, your appetite's gone, right? That affects you physically.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's say your gut is all messed up physically, right? From eating something bad, or again, getting infected with the parasite. What's going to happen? You're going to get anxiety, right? Because a lot of our emotions come from the stomach. And again, throughout the Bible, that's kind of a concept, is the fact that the soul is located in the stomach, right? Jesus said, out of the belly, living waters come out, right? There's always this like connection to the belly and the soul within the Bible, right? That all our, and it makes sense, even scientifically, all our emotions come from the stomach. And they even found neurons that we find in the brain, we can also find in the stomach. So again, it's like connected, right? So our belly
what's interesting too is like the our memories, like because I think they say like in our brain they would say the hippocampus is where our short-term memory comes, but they really don't know where like the long-term memory is stored.
The belly, most likely the belly.
Yeah, it could be like the belly, or like you were saying, like I was hearing like the heart, but yeah, like the belly and the heart are kind of like just kind of like connected, like biblically.
Yeah.
What's kind of like interesting, like the way it's described too, it's like your heart, the heart's wicked, and the heart wants all of these things, and it talks about the belly of the wicked. You know, it's like it's always suffering want because it's insatiable. It's almost like a tapeworm.
Yeah.
So it's like taking in all this stuff, and I can never fill myself up with the desires of this thing.
Or like in the Bible, it says the words of a talebearer, of a gossiper, goes down to the innermost parts of the belly, right? When somebody gossips you or hurts your feelings, you feel it in your stomach, right? Your stomach is in knots. You feel horrible. And that's another thing that's interesting is the whole concept of the gut feeling. I believe there's a good chance that like good gut feelings is the Holy Spirit, right? If it's possible that our gut is the temple of the Holy Spirit, which is actually a belief the ancient Hebrews had, that the soul and the Holy Spirit resided somewhere in the belly. Even the word heart in the Bible, like if you look up the KJV Old English translation of heart, one of the meanings is the middle, right? So like in the Bible, when it talks about the heart of an issue or the heart of the earth, that's the middle, right? Jesus went to the heart of the
correct.
Jonah was in the heart of the belly, or so the heart, one of the definitions, especially when the Bible talks about the heart in a spiritual sense, it's not talking about your organ or your consciousness, like in your head. It's talking about the stomach, right? The middle. So it's
that makes sense.
Don't trust your heart. Don't trust your gut feelings, especially if they're wrong, right? Especially if your stomach's all types of messed up. So
it's kind of like they're all related, because you're saying like that. It's like, your heart is kind of like, it's like this, the feeling you get. And so the way where you feel the feeling is in your stomach.
So think about it.
It even talks about, even like the Bible talks about wine and how like making your heart merry. So obviously, does the wine go into to the organ that pumps blood, or does it go into your belly? It's actually making So I mean, so it's like these things are kind of connected on like who you are.
Yeah. I think our identity, all our emotions come from the belly. A lot of people say that when they pray and feel the Holy Spirit, they have this like pleasant, warm feeling in the stomach, right? A lot of people in different cultures also believe that, like in Taoism, they believe that the stomach is the most important energy center. In the book of Job, it says the force of a man is where? It's in the belly, right? And
We
that,
certainly feel fear in the belly.
oh yeah, we
Mm.
feel all emotions.
But the fear is like the one, obviously, yeah, you the feel in your
Yeah,
pit of the
yeah.
stomach, or anxiety, yeah, anxiety and fear, and of course that's demonic,
Yeah, so
typically.
the belly is important inside and out. Like I worked as a personal trainer and I would always have all my clients do a core workout, right? Like without the core is the most important muscle. If you're going to ignore working out every other muscle and keep one, keep the core. Without the core, you won't be able to stand or sit or walk or run or do anything or balance, right? So the core is the most important part. And inside your belly is the most important in terms of physical and spiritual health. So again, a lot of interesting connections, right? We're told especially in America, that the flesh has nothing to do with the spirit and that it's fully separate. It's just focus on the spiritual parts. I'm like, no, it's all connected. It does matter what you eat. It does matter if you fast or not.
Is
It
that
does
why?
matter.
Is that why maybe like when you're having going through bad times, you're not hungry? Maybe because is it
Yeah.
like you're not supposed to be eating? Maybe you
It,
should. Maybe that's a message that
again,
you should be
it's the
fasting.
spirit affecting the flesh. It's interconnected, right? If you're going
Mhm.
through a bad time, well, that affects you physically. Now you don't want to eat. If there's physically something wrong with you, right? You have like a bad gut health, bad gut microbiome. Well, then that affects your emotions because our emotions come from the gut. So again, it's all intertwined. You're not going to separate it, but people
Mm.
do, and that's where a lot of issues come from. That's why Christianity today in America, especially, is in that kind of state, right? Versus when you go to like in Europe and like Eastern Orthodoxy, they take fasting very seriously, right? And because of that, they're more like wise in their decisions and how they do things and how they study the Bible. It's a lot deeper, you know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah.
Versus like Christianity in America is very shallow, right? It's like you don't have to do anything, just believe, right? It's kind of like a an Aleister Crowley, do what thou like a Christian version of Aleister Crowley's quote, like do what thou wilt as long as you believe in Christ, right? You don't have to do anything. You don't have to take care of your body. You don't have to fast. You don't have to follow the diet law. You don't have to do any of these things. Just
Yeah.
believe.
Well, it's
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 very
like
shallow.
any. It's weird. It's weird because I think anybody who's kind of got into decent shape, you just feel better.
You
And so
do, yeah.
obviously if you feel better, like obviously that, you can feel that in every other aspect. And I'm sure like guys like us who are like the body is not the most important, but it is important. Like so because sometimes we neglect our sleep doing the stuff we do. We neglect, well, if we're not eating right because we're making videos and doing stuff and you're like kind of stuck
Yeah,
behind a
yeah.
computer. But so we always have to say like I need to do more. I obviously at some point you do need to rest. I mean, it's like probably like why God obviously bless us with like, hey, you need one day a week. You kind of need to chill out. You need to rest and recuperate. You need to eat. You need to eat right. You need to sleep and all that kind of stuff. Because if you neglect that, yeah, that can bring upon stress, and then stress can beget other kinds of ailments. And
A
yeah,
domino effect, and it just affects you, right? So
absolutely.
yeah, the spirit and the flesh are fully connected. And if
Mhm.
you don't realize this, well, then that's why, you know, that's one of the reasons why a lot of people can't get over certain sins like lust, right? Like they're trying to overcome pornography, let's say, and they can't. They always go through this like roller coaster. Oh, one week I'm good, one week I'm bad, one week I'm good, one week I'm bad. And I think it's connected to the way we treat our bodies, right? If you can't control your stomach, one of the basic primal urges that we have,
Mm,
control anything else. There's a good chance you can't control anything else, right? In
deny
terms of,
yourself.
yeah, deny yourself. If you can't deny your flesh, how are you going to deny other spiritual things and fight within this spiritual warfare that we're having, right? So if you
Mhm.
can't control your flesh, if you can't take care of your flesh, then your spirit goes with it, right? If your flesh is going downhill, your spirit is going downhill too, and and vice versa.
Well,
But yeah,
I've always said in most of my research, the spiritual and the physical realm are two and one in the same.
of
Now,
course.
if you want to talk about heaven, that's a different place completely. I think that's where a lot of Christians get confused when they say the body has nothing to do with heaven. You won't have a body in heaven, type of thing. But the
Yeah.
astral plane, the spiritual realm of this earth, which a lot of other religions are more concerned with, where the Nephilim reside, where these demons reside, where the spirits are. Well, they're disembodied, but they're still here on Earth, and it's still Earth. The spirit realm is Earth. It's
Yep.
it's it's not separate from. It's an integral part of it. It's just not a part of the Earth we perceive when embodied, but it's there.
Yeah.
And it's like I said, I call it the pipe work of reality. It's like the plumbing of the universe. It's kind of like the wires behind the scenes of the mainframe. Like you're not supposed to see it,
Mhm.
but it needs to be there in order for things to work here. And what you do in the physical is a mirror of what's going on in the spiritual. It's the
True.
same place. There's no. So when you start manifesting illness, and then the same thing is mirrored in the spirit realm. Something's happening there too at the same time. They're completely
Exactly.
interconnected.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just thought I'd interject there. But yeah, carry on. This is good stuff.
JT, go to the next slide. So yeah, the church fathers considered fasting a very serious thing, right? Like one of the church fathers or one of the saints said in Orthodoxy, I believe, that where there is no prayer and fasting, there are demons, right? So if you don't engage in prayer and fasting, there's a good chance that you're not going to cast out whatever is harming you, right? And then Saint Gregory said that fasting and self-control are a double wall of defense, and whoever lives within them enjoys great peace, right? So that's why often after fasting, like I said before, you have this peace and mental clarity that you didn't experience before, right? Your vision's better, physical ailments are getting cured. You spiritually feel better. You have a drive to want to read the Bible and follow God more and spread the gospel, right? You just feel straight peace. Again, like this church father said, it's a double wall of defense, right? And you enjoy great peace when you do participate in prayer and fasting. And again, fasting itself, it is difficult, especially if you've never done it before. And I don't recommend anybody just jump into a week of fasting if they've never done it, right?
Let's go right to
Take
40
it slow.
days.
Exactly, right. So if you're the kind of person that eats breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks in between and midnight snacks, I would suggest at least skip the snacks and skip breakfast, right? Hydrate. And if you could do that and no problems, no medical issues, okay, next time or next day, next couple of days, next week, try skipping lunch too. If you could do that, try skipping dinner, go for a full day of no eating, right? If you could do that, try a few days. And again, it all depends on how big you are, right? If you were obese, you can probably handle a couple more days of fasting than the average and say person who's skinny, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I would suggest to pray on this, if you really want the answer on
it doesn't take long to get into autophagy, which is the state of fasting where you're renewing cells and destroying all the parasites and everything. I think it's 12 hours of fasting, and that's it. You're in autophagy. Yeah, I think
depending on how infected you are, really. But
yeah. But I think it's only after is it 10 hours or is it 8 hours? No, I think it's like 10 hours. You're burning fat from that point on. You're burning fat reserves, and you've used up everything in your stomach from that point for reserves, and now you've turned to the fats, and then after I think it's like 14 hours, you're now renewing dead cells. You're actually becoming renewed body in form, and all you have to do is just put the fork down, stop eating.
Well,
Drink some water, sure, but that's it. As far as it goes. And I intermittent fast myself. I do it every day. I used to do it every day, but like I said, as I was saying to Joe, I need to get back on it because I've had a holiday and it's easy. It's hard to slip back into the routine. But I tend to stop eating after 6 p.m. and I only start eating again after midday. So I have a 6 hour eating window each day. And I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I don't necessarily always eat healthy in that 6 hour window. But I do find the fasting in between helps me maintain a level of energy, a clarity, and a general sense of well-being, which I don't have otherwise when I eat after 6 p.m. And sometimes I go longer than 12, past 12, and I think the longest I've done is something like a 43-hour fast or something like that. And you do have to build yourself up through practice, through intermittent fasting first, I find. Make it a part of your life and daily routine. It doesn't have to just be go hard or go home. I'm going to fast for 3 days and kill every parasite at once sort of situation, Sorry, go ahead.
So one of my friends actually told me he fasted for a few days and he told me some like TMI information. And he said on like the second or third day of fasting, he got extremely hungry, right? And his view was that it's the parasites getting desperate because they're starving, right? They're dying. And so they take control of your behavior and your cravings, and they're making you crave sugar really bad, sugar, carbohydrates, processed foods to feed it, because it's dying. And he also said something interesting, and he stated that he became extremely horny on the third day of fasting.
Interesting.
He said he thinks this is the parasite influencing this behavior, right? Because that's one of the ways they spread is through sexual activity, right, with other people. And so basically, he thinks it's the parasites getting desperate, right? So it's like a last resort type of thing, like increase their craving for sugar, increase their craving for sex, right, to spread itself. So yeah, I thought that was interesting.
I think I did 2 days once, and then on the third day I was supposed to do like only fruit. and I did like I was eating fruit like for like half the day, and by
Yeah.
dinner I was like, I'm making macaroni and cheese because I am dying. Like I mean I felt like I was just I couldn't make it any longer than that. But yeah, I need to try that again to see if I can go 2 days. Because
Yeah.
yeah, there's a whole new level of like how you feel. But I'm one of those people who probably from doing sports and stuff.
Mhm.
I'm a eat 6 times a day kind of person. So like trying to go cold turkey is
Hmm.
It's tough.
pretty
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
pretty rough.
what's interesting is like one thing you'll notice if you've never fasted before, like my first time fasting for like 2 full days, right away I wasn't craving healthy food. I ate everything inside. I was eating chocolate with like some Russian soup and like just a bunch of random
Oh,
stuff.
gosh.
And I'm just trying to eat as much processed stuff as possible, which is weird. And thinking back on that, I wonder if that's like the parasites kind of like influencing your craving
Hmm.
for like a lot of sugar. They're like, oh, you got to eat. We're starving like crazy, right?
Hmm.
We need more fuel. That's kind of how I see it. And that's a lot of people who do fasting for the first time. They'll notice that their craving for sugar increases a lot, especially if you only do it for 2 days. If
Hmm.
I were to do it for multiple days, I think I wouldn't have that craving. If I at least did it, let's say for 5 days, my first time, that craving for sugar, I believe, would be gone. I would just
Hmm.
crave normal. So I thought that was interesting. Yeah, looking
Well,
back on
well,
that.
I found that if you do it daily, and like I said, just maybe you reach autophagy for a couple of hours a day. So do a
Yeah.
16-hour fast every day for 365 days, for a year. Then on a daily basis, you're chipping away at the parasitical infection inside of you. You're killing them off slowly, bit by bit.
Mhm.
And I found when I was in that mode, and I'd say I've been doing it for a few months, if I got to 12, my body clock is like, okay, it's time to eat. And it knows because of routine, and sometimes the hunger doesn't come now. Sometimes it hits midday and it's like I don't really want to eat. I can still keep going. I'm not hungry. Like, and I've got
It's almost
energy.
addicting. Yeah.
Yeah, and eventually you get past those horrible strong waves of cravings that just overtake you. Wait 15 minutes. Guarantee it will stop. No, it seems to
Yeah.
be how it goes. They don't have. It's like if this is the parasites doing this, they haven't got much energy themselves to keep going at you to move and make you eat. It's like they burn out too and they
Influence your
crash.
behavior, cravings. Yeah. Very
Yeah,
true.
and it, is
Go
it
to the next
is
slide.
isn't it really common as well for people who don't fast that like at night time they crave sugar? Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that people seem to like. I remember I used to like for some reason it comes like 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. I want to eat a full chocolate bar for some reason.
Yeah.
Like it's a raging desire as well. It's kind of like it takes over you. It's like I've got
Bizarre.
to
Yeah.
I've got to eat some chocolate now. It's
Yeah.
one of those feelings, you know what I mean? And it's not you. I know it's not me. I'm like, why? And I eat the chocolate bar and I feel really bad about myself afterwards. I'm like,
Same.
why did I just do that? I feel like I've been used. That's what it feels like. And
Mhm.
maybe it is. Maybe this is what's actually going on. It's just interesting. So go ahead. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So yeah, continuing the topic of biblical commandments being anti-parasitical, the diet law is also anti-parasite. So within the Bible, the book of Leviticus and Deuteronomy, God gives us a list of animals we should be eating and shouldn't be eating, right? So one thing I found that's interesting about the unclean animals, the common thing they have with each other is the fact that they're all bottom feeders. They eat dead carcasses and dead animals and garbage and feces, right?
Hmm.
And scientifically, unclean animals within the Bible are more likely to be a haven for parasites, right? Like pork. We've all heard of like pork worms and pork parasites, right? Specifically associated with pork. Shellfish, right? A lot of shellfish also contains parasites because they're like the bottom feeders of the ocean. They eat whatever and they become havens for parasites, and people eat these products, and that's one of the ways they become infected. So yeah, the diet law is anti-parasite, which is very interesting. But yeah,
Hmm.
next one.
It definitely does put it into context, doesn't it? It just seems like such an arbitrary law. Don't eat shellfish.
Yeah,
It's like why? Like, why? It's such an odd thing to say, isn't it? Like
I
of all
fish
the
without
animals,
scale.
yeah, it's like of all the
Well,
animals,
it's funny.
just not
It's
that
funny.
one.
Like
Go ahead.
I think Jay Dreamer Z. We were doing a thing, and he has this thing about shellfish, and he's basically saying like they're like insects. Like
Yeah.
They are
they're like
of the ocean. Yeah.
it's basically what they are. It's like kind of like yeah, like a cockroach and like a lobster are really not all that different.
Yeah, so I do follow the diet law because it practically makes sense, right? Like a rule of thumb is just follow what Jesus did. Did Jesus eat unclean animals? No. Well, there's probably good reason for that, right? And although the Bible doesn't give us the broad reason or the specific reasons for a lot of the commandments, it says in the Bible that the spirit of truth is going to lead you to all truth, right?
Mm.
So if you want answers for why you should follow this, well, God's going to lead you to these answers. And I believe he's led me to figuring out this kind of stuff, right? So another commandment in the Bible is that God tells people in Leviticus or his people to salt every food offering that they have, meaning put sea salt on every single food item. And
Paul,
according to
see, maybe we don't oversalt things. Maybe you guys
well,
undersalt them.
here's the thing. There's a difference between natural sea salt and table salt. Table salt's horrible. It's full of caking agents and preservatives. Sea salt is good for you, right? Natural sea salt is. And so there are scientific studies that show that a diet high in sea salt could protect against invading microbes and parasites, basically kill them, right? So in Leviticus chapter 2, verse 13, it says, "And every oblation of thy meat offering shall thou season with salt, neither shalt thou suffer the salt of thy covenant, of the covenant of thy God, to be lacking from thy meat offering. With all thine offerings thou shalt offer salt," right? So he's saying, don't be stingy with the salt, right? When you salt your meat and stuff, like every single food that you eat, every meat you cook with, put a decent amount of salt on it. And like I said, scientifically, it kills parasites, right? A diet higher in sea salt kills parasites. Another thing I didn't mention on here is I believe drinking wine also helps your gut microbiome, right? It fixes it. And I believe it also kills parasites. And in the Bible, I don't know if it was Timothy who said, for the sake of
Yes.
your stomach, drink a little wine, not just water, right? For
Mm-hmm.
ailments, he even said specifically for ailments and sicknesses, drink a little wine, not just water. So obviously in moderation, right? Don't get drunk, but like you can drink wine, it's not a sin.
Well, is it because alcohol kills certain like bacteria?
And there's vitamins and
Prob
minerals in wine that's also
hmm
benefits
Is
the
it
gut microbiome.
the antioxidants in red
Yep,
wine?
antioxidants, correct. Yep.
Yeah.
And so even Timothy says that for the sake of your stomach, drink a little wine, don't just drink water, right? And what was I going to say? Yeah, next slide, I guess.
It's funny because red wine is definitely my drink of choice if I was to
I
drink.
love red wine. I don't like anything else. Red wine
Yeah.
is my favorite.
I don't really drink anymore. I don't have time being a father. I just don't.
Yeah.
Like I just don't even. I can't even imagine being drunk anymore because what if I need to go? What if something happens and I need to drive? It's one of those
Yeah.
type of things. I would never risk it, but I do. I do. When I did drink regularly, it was always wine, red wine. I always looked very
Mhm.
strange to everyone else around me, drinking lager and spirits and things like that. I was always
hmm
the one with the glass of wine in my hand. Maybe there's a good reason for that. Maybe the Lord was moving through me and I didn't even realize it at the time. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even in the Bible, it says that God made wine to gladden the heart of man. So it's also for our enjoyment too in
Mm.
moderation, right? That was one of the first miracles Jesus did for the wedding. So it's not like it's only for medicine, right? It is for your enjoyment,
Well,
relax.
it says multiple times in the Bible that it's like I said, it's to make your heart merry. So I mean, it's
Exactly, right? It was
yeah.
made
There
by
is
God and he blesses it, right? So yeah,
they were
this
drinking
was
at a wedding. They were drinking at a wedding because it makes your heart merry.
well, the Baptists say it was Welch's grape juice that they were drinking.
Yeah, actually, Demon Racers and I had an argument about that, and I was just like, it's funny because even like some people would say, well, it's the older wine gets fermented, and that's what it is. But specifically in Acts chapter 2, when the Holy Spirit descends on them after Pentecost,
Yeah,
they get accused of being drunk on new
drunk off
wine.
wine. Yeah,
But
exactly.
they say I think the translation says new wine. They're too full of new wine,
Yeah,
and that's
and
when
grape juice doesn't heal your gut microbiome like wine, so it's definitely alcoholic wine. It's not
Mm.
Welch's grape juice. But
and
yeah,
and no and Noah got drunk off wine after he
exactly.
made a vineyard, and so the wine back
Wine
in
is
Noah's
wine.
day got you drunk. I would say
Yeah,
that wine's always probably been wine.
yes, it's
Yeah.
been wine is wine, right? So yeah, this was the end, and I believe the Bible does mention these parasites, and I think it calls it the worm that never dies in the book of Mark, chapter 9, verse 46. But yeah, that's all I got.
Mm.
Well, we were just saying before while you were off, I was saying what's interesting, Lord of the Rings, you have Wormtongue is the one who is like possessing Theoden, like the king. Remember, he's all like demon possessed, and he has to be cast
Is
him
it when he
out.
opens his mouth and little worms out there? Right? Is that?
Well, no, there's the evil looking character. He's real kind of slimy looking. He's got dark
Oh,
black hair, real
that's
pale
right.
skin, and his name is Wormtongue. And he's
Yeah.
like the one who is got this spell over the king, and the king looks all old and decrepit, and then he gets cast out of him, and then he becomes like he was before.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
said,
Yeah. Okay. I remember.
pretty interesting that it's the worm tongue, and I couldn't help but think like when I was preparing for this, I was watching some videos about that. Yeah, parasites are demons, and they were
Yeah.
mentioning the zombie snail, the zombie uh, cicadas, and the zombie deer. And the zombie deer were like literally unaliving themselves, jumping off a bridge,
Hmm.
jumping off cliffs. There's like video of it. It's obviously it's really horrific, and I couldn't help but think when Jesus casts out Legion,
Yeah.
Legion doesn't want to go to the pit, so he says, "Send me into the pigs." And what
Yeah.
do
I
the
heard
pigs do?
they
The
drowned
pigs
themselves.
they immediately go down and drown themselves.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? Speaking of the whole parasite thing, the T. Gandhi can also affect like other animals like crickets. And there's something called cricket suicide where the parasite takes control of the brain and body and forces the cricket to drown itself, and then the parasite comes out and infects something else. So it's interesting that the pigs chose to drown themselves and free the demons, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Well, that was a great presentation, actually. Thanks for doing that. I really appreciate that. I have so many questions. The first one that immediately comes to my mind, and what I'm wondering immediately is, do we know where parasites came from? Do we have a scientific explanation for the origin of the parasites, like as a concept, as a thing, or is it one of those
Yeah.
things that we assume they've just always been there? They've evolved with mankind and sort of. But I don't know. It's just such. Well, because when you see them up close and like the
Yeah.
thumbnail I made here, they look
Yeah.
like demons. They look like
Mhm.
monsters. They look like what you would imagine a demon to look like if you were to actually see one in person, But they are microscopic, invisible to the human eye, But when you look at them, yeah, they look like creatures from the void, from some kind of Lovecraftian horror,
Yeah.
They are actually like monsters, true
Yeah.
monsters, and
Very weird looking things. I believe maybe this is how they're able to thrive, after the flood when the physical form of the demons and the gods were wiped out. This is how they thrived, right? This is how they controlled people, controlled the pharaohs, maybe with the whole serpent thing coming out of his head. Um,
absolutely.
yeah,
Well, is it possible that these tiny little organisms, they're not demons themselves, but the spirit demons could possess these little things
yeah.
that are
That was my
smaller?
whole point. It's like a
Yeah.
Bluetooth biological agent.
Oh,
So it's
right. Yeah,
the
because
demon
because it makes
itself.
sense. So like, well, so if a
Yeah.
demon could possess a cat, and so the cat is not a demon,
Hmm.
No,
the
no.
cat is a vessel, just like we could be vessels, and they
The
could use
parasite's not a demon.
any means to. Well, I think a lot of people like I'm kind of. I mean, of course, it is funny. It makes sense because they look like like Paul was saying. They when you put them under a microscope,
Like monsters.
they certainly
Yeah.
look like little monsters, don't they? And
Yeah.
so, but yeah, knowing that, it's another one. I guess I got a million movies popping through my head. What was the one? Is it the Sword in the Stone when the wizard is fighting against like the witch,
Yeah.
and they're changing forms, and at one point the witch becomes a dragon, and I
Mm.
think the wizard becomes a virus to him to win at the end.
Hmm.
The witch gets real big as a dragon, and he gets
Yeah.
real small, and then gets the dragon sick and wins. And it's like, yeah, so it's like this stuff of like, even we were saying like, Paul and I were talking off air where like
Mhm.
it's almost like the idea of dimensions. Like we have a perception of like a different dimension. It's like you have to go through this doorway and like everything's different. But couldn't a different dimension almost be like the movie Ant-Man? You have the quantum realm where it's like
Mhm.
there's this whole universe here, but we're literally too big to perceive it. Just in the same way that we could be living in a place, almost like the idea of like that cat having a universe on its necklace, where like the dimension
Mhm.
is because we can't perceive something that's so big either. So something
Yeah.
that's so small and so big, and
Mm.
that's why we're kind of in this in
That's
Middle Earth, and
yeah.
we can't perceive that.
That's
There's
interesting.
definitely a whole world
Middle Earth
inside
is
of it.
interesting. It's fascinating you say that actually because even C.S. Lewis wrote a book. Um, it's about a bus that went to hell from. So it's well, it's a bus that gave a tour of heaven, for inhabitants of hell, basically. That's what, and you find that the catch was that when they come home on the bus, they're actually getting smaller and smaller and smaller. They're not moving; they're just shrinking. The bus isn't driving forward. They're actually going smaller into a crack in the earth, and then even closer and smaller down. And all of hell is inhabited in this tiny microscopic speck of non-existence and nothingness, and it's pathetic and worthless. But when they expanded to go to heaven, it was this glorious place, you know, and it's kind of, metaphorically speaking, was C.S. Lewis telling us there that, well, the other dimensions is actually smaller. It's not just beyond a veil necessarily. But, and someone said in the comments earlier, which is quite astute and connects to this, is when people take DMT, are they just seeing the smaller realm? Has their consciousness shrunk down rather than expanded out as they like to think they have? And now they just perceive on a level of microscopic, and it's psychedelic and crazy, and they're seeing things that you just can't perceive with the naked eye, and energies flowing and things like that on a microscopic level. Because like I said, it would make sense it would be the opposite of what they believe it to be, because they always believe that I'm going to a better, more expanded consciousness reality. What if the catch is you're just going to the place where the demons are in the microscopic world, and you're just perceiving the microscopic world on DMT, and it looks psychedelic and crazy, and it's infested with demon jester clown monster things all waving around and serpentining all over the place.
Yeah, it would look really, it would really, yeah, like, yeah, if you could almost, like, yeah, you could see what's in your body, like that would be terrifying. You know, that's like the whole thing, like the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. You look at like certain insects and they would be
like Ozzy and Drix, if you've ever seen that.
Oh no, but horrific monster. But what's also interesting, like in the Ant-Man thing, they go like do the Mandela effect thing through like the quantum realm because time works different down where it's real small, which obviously makes sense too. It would work differently if everything was real big, like how God might perceive time because God's so big and infinite that he could kind of see all of the facets of time, and we perceive time a certain way at the level we're at, and then smaller, it's even different.
This is fascinating. This is a new perspective on what it means to think about heaven and hell or dimensions, because people imagine it's equal to in size, but size was never a part of the equation until now. It was always lateral rather than, I don't know, up and down. And maybe this would give us something to that phrase "as above, so below" that the occult love to use so much. Maybe that's what they're trying to reference when they say it below. They quite literally mean like smaller, down in a shrunken sense, not below the earth in like a cavernous pit or something, but down to a level where you can't perceive anymore, like shrinking. Yeah, it's interesting. And what does mainstream science obsess over? But quantum physics and microbiology and all these type of things. They're always trying to understand the unseen realm, but we just thought, oh well, that's just normal science stuff. But what if they're actually these are spiritual concepts, highly spiritual concepts that science is playing with, and they've just used secular language to kind of cover it up and make it seem mundane and simple, but it's not at all, because like I said, a parasite, you can't even perceive it unless you have an electron microscope, and even then an electron is imperceptible. It's silly how tiny these things are, yet they have such an influence on us when you think about it.
They're not invisible, they're just really small, in the same way that like the things above us are in this different level where you need a telescope to see this, you need a microscope to see these things.
See, I idea that God in heaven, metaphorically speaking, could be perceiving us through a microscope from his perspective. Like if it's just like a cone shaped level, that's all it is, and we're in the middle.
Well, it says we look like grasshoppers from heaven, according to
right.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Well, it was interesting. I was saying that those whatever, like the bacteria, whatever would basically, or the parasites would relay messages to the gods based on, wasn't the Taoist belief?
Yeah, the transgression.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, very strange.
So, just shifting here to let's talk about solutions. Okay, so we understand biblically prayer and fasting, extremely powerful tool. The antioxidant nature of red wine, has been endorsed by Jesus himself as a great tool again to cleanse the gut of parasites. But are there any advice? And by the way, we are not medical professionals. This is not medical advice. Do not take this disclaimer here, we're just people talking and we're not advising you do anything here. But I've heard banded around a lot in my own Telegram group, because I have a medicine section there. People talking about taking parasite cleanses and things like
Yeah.
it is like black walnut is one thing I hear banded around. Quite literally drinking turpentine is another thing I've heard,
Oh,
which sounds extremely. I
that'll,
mean, as a
that'll clear you out.
well, as an artist, turpentine is just for cleaning paintbrushes. Okay, I would not have ever considered ingesting anything of the sort. But then people say,
Yeah.
"Well, you need medical grade turpentine." I'm like, "What? What does that even mean?"
Yeah.
And it's kind
It'll
of
be stronger.
I just have horror story images in my mind of my intestinal lining burning away, and things like that. But do you have you looked in vitally to any solutions for parasite cleanses beyond the biblically endorsed fasting and prayer, or how do you do those things yourself? Because I am very curious. I have been on the teetering on the edge of doing a parasite cleanse for months, but I just don't know if I can. It's that silly thing in the back of my mind, like maybe I just need to let go of my brainwashing and just go with it and trust what people are telling me that it does work. But all mainstream science is telling me is don't drink turpentine. It will kill you. So it's kind of maybe I need to let go of that. But I'm struggling to take those steps. Do you have any advice? Have you thought about this concept?
Yeah. So like, well, the first step is, elimination. Eliminate anything that can get you infected from parasites. So one thing is stop eating unclean animals. Stop eating pork. Stop eating shellfish, right? Do the Jesus diet. Eat exactly like Jesus ate, right? That's the first step. In terms of destroying them, obviously prayer and fasting. I'd also suggest fixing your gut health, right? Drink a lot of like soups, bone broth soups, like nutrient dense soup. Especially like if you want to go into fasting, right? Do like a soup fast if you've never fasted before. Take like a bunch of bone marrow, right? Beef bones, boil them with garlic and onion and all these different ingredients, and drink that for a couple of days, right? So before even fasting, because that's what I would recommend to some of my clients who had gut issues. They're asking me, should I fast, right, for weight loss and for health? And I tell them no, because your gut lining is all messed up. Fix your gut lining first with the nutrients it needs from like soups, bone marrow soup, stuff like that. And then you could proceed with the fasting, right? So if you have gut lining issues, I don't recommend fasting and not eating anything. It's going to cause more problems. So fix your gut health, fix your gut microbiome, do some research into that, right? Pray on this topic. That's the only advice I really have aside. Now, the whole parasite cleanse thing, I don't really look into that kind of stuff because there's so much unknown. You don't know if you're doing more harm to your body, like taking that medicine you're talking about for cleaning paintbrushes.
Well, I think
Yeah,
I would err on saying don't. Yeah, look for an alternative to that.
yeah.
I think there are natural
I just look
things.
at
I think it's black walnut is what I've heard. Like there are
Do
herbal
they?
remedies for that are anti-parasitical that you can take.
and the Bible says to use, herbs and medicines like that.
Yeah, but I heard people saying, basically take dog dewormer. Is it ivermectin? Is that the one? I've heard that around quite a lot. And again, that just
Yeah.
screams
Again,
my worldly secular programming, which I need to break free from, is screaming, "Don't take dog medicine. That's a stupid idea," And it's kind of like, am I just being silly? Is it actually fine, and it would actually do more good for me than what the mainstream are telling me, or is it stupid to take dog with dewormer? It's that kind of where do I go with that kind of information? Like, and I haven't. I decided against taking anything like that myself. I think I might just stick to fasting and all that kind of thing.
God, yeah. Just take God's word advice, right? I mean, he tells you what you need to do, right? Take natural remedies, right? Holistic type plants and medicines. I would suggest that if you're really unsure, like stay away from all those parasite cleanses, right? And that
it seems like
there's
something
going on TikTok too.
Yeah, it seems like something, especially in the truther community. Like,
Yeah,
there are some charlatan snake oil salesmen out there just
absolutely.
looking for suckers in our community who are desperate for that kind of thing, and will promise that their snake oil will do everything perfect for you. And it's kind of
Out everything, right?
I've got to be careful. I mean, there are people
Yeah.
out there who would sell the perfect parasite cleanse on their channel, maybe. Nephilim Death Squad, I'm looking at you. So it's kind of. Oh, are you sure it works? Like, I don't actually know. Like, and again, I'm not disparaging people who do these things. I'm sure I'll get plenty of comments telling me, "Paul, it worked for me. You just need to do it. Just take this, this, and that," and I'm going to get so much medical advice. It's unheard of, completely unsolicited. I know it's going to happen. I'll get the emails as well, but. It's just there's just something about it where I'm like, I'm scared. I'm scared of taking those things because I don't
Same,
know
same.
the actual
I'd
effects.
I'd rather play it safe, you know. I'd
Yeah.
rather play it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I really want parasites out of my body. Like, I really do want just a quick get them out now solution because it sounds the consequences of having them
Yeah,
sounds.
never take the easy route. You know, I would say just do
Mm,
what the Bible says: fast, pray, fix your gut health,
hmm
salt all your food, right? Use a proper amount of sea salt.
mm.
The Bible, God's word is the answer as usual, right?
Yes,
And
and sea salt's delicious. It's way better than
Salt like you're a
yeah,
Floridian.
like you're Floridian. Absolutely. Yeah. No.
No,
Yeah. Go ahead.
no,
Sorry.
it's funny. It's interesting. The whole subject though. My wife was following like an Instagram account. I think she was a doctor. I'm pretty sure she got her account banned at different times, but she was like attributing a lot of things that we call viruses or other kinds of ailments to parasites. And she was like almost saying like almost like 90% of the things that we think, including like major diseases. And
mhm.
obviously, I'm not a doctor. Yeah, well, actually, she popped in. She lost her license saying some of these things, and
Yeah,
but it kind of makes sense though that if you're treating like based on the medical industry that we do know like that it's for profit, and if it was something like a parasite, you could probably get rid of that easier than you could just to be treating symptoms of other
exactly.
issues.
Mhm.
Hmm. I mean, if it's already happened in the chat now, someone said, "Well, don't say what did they say here? I want to say it exactly." And this is the kind of stuff I have to deal with. Sorry, guys. Hold on. Suspense here. Building suspense. Something like basically, don't say ignorant things and you won't get unsolicited advice or something like that. It's kind of like, I'm trying not to be ignorant here. I'm literally here right now learning about parasites from somebody who's made videos about it. I'm asking, what shall I do about the cleanse situation? And I've tried to explain, I've heard all these solutions and people are like, oh, you're just
Yeah.
ignorant. You don't know, you don't understand. Like, it's kind of,
There's nothing wrong with being ignorant, right? Like, I
I'm
mean, we're all ignorant
trying.
about the things we're all ignorant about the things we don't know. The only real problem is like when you want to remain ignorant. It's like Paul's asking for help, and it's like you're ignorant. Yeah,
Well,
yeah. I mean, I admit
I
that.
am. I am.
Admittedly, he's not claiming to be an expert on this. He's asking.
That's why we learn, right?
Mhm.
It's not.
Right. Yeah. You can't be. Well,
We all know.
like what is it in 1 Corinthians 3, Vitaly, when it says that become a fool so you can become wise.
Yeah, like a
Like
little
admit,
child, like
yeah,
go into
admit
these
you don't
topics
know
like you
anything.
know. Yeah, that's what you should do. That's how you learn faster. That's why, scientifically speaking, children learn quicker is because they don't make assumptions. They're just like, I want to learn about whatever topic this is, right? That's why
I
they
mean,
can learn languages and instruments faster than us.
yeah. Well,
Right. Well, it's
I'm literally here saying, look, I know I have all these preconceived assumptions that were programmed into me, and
Yeah.
am I just being silly? I'm openly saying that, and I still get people angry at me saying, as if you're disparaging my parasite cleanse program. It's kind of I don't know if it works
We're just
or not.
asking questions, right?
Yeah,
We're not making.
exactly. I think people take it personally because I know there are a lot of people in art, especially in the truth community, which I'm a member of. I've got my pronouns here, truther theorist. Like it's a big deal to them. This stuff they take it
Yeah,
very personally because they have this rigid regime of I cleanse the parasites weekly and daily, and I do the fasting and I do all the right things. I'm anti big pharma type people. The medical
yeah,
industry is a lie. You don't need any of that. You don't understand. And I know it's a big personal thing for people. So again, to all you, I understand it. You're probably right about a lot of things you're saying. You really probably are. And I know the medical industry is utterly corrupt. Don't think I don't know that. I know that. Just another just kind of the disclaimer there. I think so. I think a lot of people hear me say an offhand comment and think that I just don't know anything, and then they brush me with the broad stroke. I probably just brush them with or something like that. I don't know. So I'm just saying. But anyway, guys, we've been going for an hour 41. I think that's a good amount of time. So we should probably wrap this up.
yep.
Maybe do a bit of an after show for the patrons only, something like that. Maybe we can keep this conversation going. But do you have any closing comments from each of you? We'll start with Joe, and we'll let Vitally finish this one. So anything you want to say, guys, about this topic before we close it off? Joe, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think it's a great topic, and obviously, as we were saying, like especially like in the movies and the culture, just like the little hints they give you that there's something more to this that we didn't know we were looking at. Now we can kind of see like the references to the yes, like parasites, spiritual activity in people's lives, negative spiritual activity. So I think, again, as Paul's asking questions, I think it's his, like when we talk about the little C's and we have to like revisit everything. I think this is good. This is the stuff that Batali picks up in the Bible, like that our God's a God of order, and if He tells you to do something or not to do something, sometimes He could just be trying to get you to listen to Him. But I think a lot of times God can do both things. He can have something very practical, relevant, protective, like a good father. And I brought up,
Mhm.
I saved these verses at the end. I thought about like the whole idea of, like denying yourself in certain ways, potentially with fasting. And so the verses I came up with were, well, obviously the first one that just came right to mind was, let's see, sorry, I saved this. Should have froze this. Okay, wait, it's more highlighted. Okay, so Hebrews 12:11. For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. And then
Mhm.
then I went into Timothy, where it says, for while bodily training is of some value, godliness is the value in every way, as it holds the promise for this present life and also the life to come. So bodily training still does have value, so obviously discipline yourself in all the kinds of ways that, you know, it is denial of self. And I do think that, yeah, a healthy body, clear head, can read the Bible, like obviously you can connect with the Bible more. And obviously sometimes you have to deny yourself and say, I really want to eat that cheeseburger, but I'm going to eat nothing and I'm going to pray and connect with God. So yeah, I believe that we're mind, body, and spirit. Take care of all three. Put the spirit ahead of all of them, but yes.
Yep.
Well
But
said.
yeah, closing statements. Do what the Bible says and don't try to disconnect the spirit from the flesh, right? It's all connected. Once people make that realization, then finally we won't be on the statistic in America of being the fattest religion, the unhealthiest religion, the most shallow, right? So yes, the spirit and the flesh are connected. It does matter what you do physically, how you eat, what you eat, how you treat your body, if you sleep around or not. Again, just follow the commandments within the Bible. Live like Jesus lived, right? Rule of thumb, so simple. That's what we're told to do. That's what we're taught to do. And now we can see the evidence that we really do need to walk and live and eat and do everything like Jesus, right? Not just love like him or worship God like him, but do everything. Like eat like him, live like him, walk like him, everything. But yeah, that's all I got.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. I couldn't end it better myself. So we'll leave it there, guys. Thanks for joining us, and for everyone listening, links are down below to watch Vitali's work on this. He's made a few videos already, but it has quite a lot of it. Is it hundreds? Are we in the hundreds now, Vitali? How many videos have you got up there? It's quite a lot, isn't it?
Oh, in general?
On your channel, how many videos have you got now
Oh,
available?
a couple hundred.
A couple
Couple.
hundred, yeah. So there's a huge backlog of work you can go and check out, and obviously go to Joe's channel as well. Loads of stuff on there. One of our talks we just did talking about Tucker Carlson has just blown up on Instagram. It's huge, and people are really loving that stuff. And like I said, guys, join my Patreon. We're about to do an after talk, which will be available for you guys to listen on there as well. So thanks for listening here today, guys. I hope you learned something from this. I know I did. Thanks for doing this again at AlphaTalkz. Thanks for joining us, Joe, and we'll see you next time. And as always, God bless.
God bless.